Which
you gonna steer? Or?
No, there's nothing that says. I just really wanted to kind of pick your nose about.
Do I look at it?
I don't care where you look.
Is your mic on?
The bezel mic is. I haven't figured out what the hell's going on with that thing yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm honestly just on the verge of reformatting this thing. All the people from NCH Swift Sound say that it's the guys that make this program, Q-tips, say that it's a computer problem, which I think is horseshit. But it turns out reformatting these things is relatively easy. So yes. In any event, yeah. What'd you think?
I thought Star Wars was excellent. I thought it was amazing.
Do you think he did a better job with it, with putting his hands on it, than he did with the Star Trek franchise?
Easily, for much the same reasons you highlighted in your review. Star Wars really only works when it's executed that way, and that Star Wars has never been about large-scale spectacle and overly produced visuals so much as it has been about human experience and characters. And yeah, there's a fantasy element to it, and you've got to be impressed by what you're seeing, but still it's all about character-driven developments and what happens to them.
I couldn't agree with you more. Just 100%. So before we get too terribly much further into this thing, this is me just telling everybody right now, this is all the warning you get. I'm nothing in the movie is off limits. I'm going to be asking questions and talking about everything, including the great big spoilery, plot twistery things. So once again, please, if you haven't seen the movie, go see the movie. If you're at all curious about Star Wars, you'll be doing yourself a huge disservice by sitting here listening to this before you've actually had an opportunity to see it. I think it's a great film. He thinks it's a great film. Absolutely, please go watch the movie first. Without further ado, the plot, and I mentioned this a little bit in the review that I had the other day. Don't read ahead. There's a great big storyboard up here in my monitor of all the shit that we're supposed to talk about. Yeah, that's what you get. Go to hell and die. My wife called this a fairy tale. And I think that was a really, really apt description for the plot. Simply because if you stop and you look at it as an adult, there are lots of plot holes and lots of, wait, really? Really? Is that what, but if you look at it as a fairy tale, you examine the older fairy tales, and there are tons of plot holes in them too, but you just don't care because the story wasn't written for close intellectual examination. It was written to simply sweep you along from one set piece to the next. What do you is that something you can identify with? Do you think maybe the plot had too many holes in it to be really effective? What do you think of the story of the movie?
I would state, and granted you didn't name any specifics to what you identified as holes, but for me, any unanswered questions, I'm deciding to postpone judgment and hope that those things are filled in the next ones, because there's a lot about these characters that we do not know. There's a lot about Rey we don't know, and it hinted in the vision sequence that we'll get to know more about that. I don't really care if we learn more about Bro Dameron. He's still a cool character in my book. So,
and he makes sex bots on the side. If anybody who's seen Ex Machina,
yep, does that in his downtime.
Yeah, takes all the hair off of his head and puts it on his face instead.
Makes you wonder about BB-8. No. It's a veritable spike that's been set up to get just absolutely pounded over the net if, I think his name's Rian Johnson, the guy who's handling episode 8, story-wise and direction-wise, if he chooses to explore it, which he should, it could be a pretty good payoff. But for the time being, we're always kind of left wondering, what's the deal?
Yeah, which, you know, they've established that it's going to be a trilogy. They've always come in threes, so there's definitely room for explanations. What are your thoughts on Starkiller Base essentially being another goddamn Death Star? Where is the Empire getting all of this money? We put a cover over the exhaust port this time, so it's okay.
That was the one part that I actually had kind of a hard time getting over, because it just felt like the Family Guy Star Wars. Like, they've built the Death Star again. So yeah, what are we gonna? We're just gonna run up and shoot it again? I'm trying to remember what the exact Peter Griffin quote was in the Family Guy Return of the Jedi. Basically, something to the effect of, "Yeah, that's why this makes no fucking sense. We did this already." It's like, but this one's bigger. It's like, isn't this just like the Death Star? This is the Death Star. Starkiller Base is this big. It ate 10 Death Stars for breakfast. And then, and I have a defense for this, and it's a weak defense, but I'll stand by it. The methods by which the Starkiller Base weapon is powered by sapping the energy from the sun.
Yeah,
what I will say is this can't be the Empire. And they've stated the Empire has crumbled. First Order kind of came out of the ruin of that. First Order is not as smart as the Empire, because to build a planetary-sized weapon that literally saps the energy from a sun, you got to figure that's a finite energy source, and once that sun is completely zapped, not only have you only destroyed 2 systems, but the planet you've just invested billions of space credits in to build your giant super weapon, excuse me, is probably gone because you've wrecked an entire solar system.
I'm glad that you said that.
Where's all that capital going to go? Where are the First Order bean counters?
The physics involved, and I, you know, again, fairy tale, trying not desperately not to look too terribly far behind the green curtain here, but the physics involved in Starkiller Base hurt my head. They just, you know, at the end when Starkiller Base gets blown up, you don't get that massive concussive explosion and the praxis effect that you did when the first 2 Death Stars get blown up. No, the planet just sort of goes, you know, again, not to call back to the Family Guy, but when Peter Griffin eats all those dehydrated MREs for Doomsday, and everybody leave the room right now. That's kind of what I felt. Starkiller Base, for all of that compressed, you know, stellar energy that was harnessed inside of that planet, they just and then there's a sun there instead.
That's not even to address the fact that you've so radically altered the physical makeup of a planetary body that's going to alter things like gravitational pull, orbit. That's what it's called. The thing where it goes around. Public school, guys. The thing where it goes around the sun that they're constantly pulling energy from and further wrecking that system. But here's circling back to how I said there is a defense, and it's a weak defense. It's essentially what you said, is that Star Wars is not, and I've said this to you billions and billions of times, and I stand by it. Star Wars is not science fiction. People can try and shoehorn Star Wars into science fiction all they want. Does not make it science fiction. Calling a duck a cow isn't going to make a duck not quack. Star Wars is fantasy. Therefore, you have to apply the same suspension of disbelief that you do to any other fantasy situation. Like when you watch Lord of the Rings, you don't. It's just like, yeah, but does the ring really make people invisible? I mean, really? I mean, come on. I got a ring the other day and it didn't do that at all. You don't. You accept it because it is what it is. It's the accepted parameters within the story. The story is told that way, therefore it just is.
And that's one of the neat things that makes that easy for a lot of folks, I think, is the fact that, and something that quite frankly supports your statement about Star Wars being fantasy and not science fiction, is Star Wars never hits you over the head with the heavy science hammer. It never insists that this is the way this works and we're going to I mean, for God's sakes, the Force. You never get hit over the head with the heavy sci-fi hammer, with the deep, you know, nobody ever comes in and starts spouting off about Asimov's, and laws of three or whatever.
Fortunately, we have another wonderful star-titled franchise that does that. Abrams be damned does that for us.
Indeed.
So it's the same reason I would just like, hey, what do you like better? You like Star Wars and Star Trek? Everybody's got to pick one. And that's nerd profiling for one, and that's just offensive. But you really, if you think about it a little bit, you don't have to pick one over the other because one is science fiction and one is fantasy. And literally all it takes is comparing the two. What's the most common... I'm trying to think of the good word for this. The most common sub-descriptor ascribed to Star Wars has always been space opera. Everybody just gets hung up on the first part. Space, so therefore it's science fiction. Better example would be, I don't think people would consider Chris Nolan's Interstellar to be science fiction necessarily. Yeah, it's in the future, so there's technology we don't have yet, but at the same time there's okay, maybe scratch that.
I was gonna say, yes. I'm not sure where you're going with this, but the payoff better be awesome.
But my 4 hours of sleep just told me that Chris Nolan's Interstellar wasn't science fiction. Is science fiction, case in point, it's in space, and there's a lot of science to it. Space!
Today we will go.
But no, Star Wars has never been a case in point. If they wanted Star Wars to be science fiction, they wouldn't preface every single episode by saying, a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, where anything's possible, really. Because I say it is.
So, there's this, there's just a plethora of extras to be found. They're the last normal, not Blu-ray, but normal set of DVDs that Lucasfilm churned out. There was an entirely separate DVD full of special features. And it was right before Episode 3 came out. One of those special features highlighted Ian McDiarmid and how he got into his role as Palpatine. And at one point during that interview, as he's talking about his role as Palpatine and how he's affecting the world and how he's affecting Anakin, he says that if you wanted a subtitle for these movies, it could be Fathers and Sons. What are your thoughts on that? I find that extraordinarily apt myself. If you wanted to go there, because you could melt down everything, and it really, really is. Star Wars is really a great deal about the sins of the father and the sins of the son, and whether or not one can grow beyond the other.
While I would hesitate to limit it to that lane, I would say that's definitely accurate. I mean, it's a central theme of much of the series, prequels aside, and shall have a slightly more final word on the comparisons there later, perhaps in closing statements. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it, and then at the very least, this film has the ambition to step beyond that and look at the repercussions of the father-son dynamic, because here there be spoilers. Luke is gone. No one's seen Luke in, I wouldn't say quite 30 years, because it's been 30 years since Jedi. There was a cataclysmic event involving him and a bunch of other Jedi, or would-be Jedi, some years later, and now he's gone. Darth Vader's obviously gone. He's dead, although to people who still are true believers of what actually happened 30 years ago, it's a presence that's felt. Almost like any other, dictator. Yeah, dictators have come and gone and died, but there's a reason they're still in our textbooks. They left a very lasting impression, and Vader was definitely one of those. Your main antagonist, Kylo Ren, is a huge Vader fanboy, and
I want to spend a whole lot more time talking about Kylo when we get further on down the line here, so I don't want to dip too deeply into him just yet. He's got a whole other section.
then they'll hold off. Yeah, fathers and sons, definitely a central thing. I honestly, I'd only say there's one other theme in the good Star Wars movies that really goes beyond that.
And that is
just full realization of oneself. If we were in a Star Wars movie, they'd call it destiny, but your best, most identifiable characters in Star Wars have always come from seemingly obscurity, and overcome their own intrinsic belief that there's nothing remarkable or nothing special about them, and they go on to do amazing things in spite of that.
Will to power,
yeah,
or something like that.
Essentially.
So let's talk about the characters in the movie, and we have to start off with Rey. Absolutely delighted to see. I'm going to be one of those guys. I'm delighted to see a female main character in a movie, and I'm delighted to see Daisy Ridley. I thought did a fantastic job with that character. Great range of emotions in the movie,
and she's hot.
That helps too. Completely derailed. I'm going to skip to the end of the line here. Do you think she's supposed to be Luke's daughter?
I hope not.
No, he says.
Nothing pisses me off more in movies or as a series like this where you already have so much established and that it would be easy to put her on rails. To I feel like it'd be too easy to take that route. Too easy. Just like all these dudes like, oh, what if Kylo Ren's a Darth Vader clone? Which, by the way, fuck you, internet. You were wrong. Well, what if this? What if that? I genuinely hope not. Because that would, honestly, I feel like it would kind of serve to undermine her as a character and her own development. Because then, like, literally anything she goes on to do, including what she's already done in this movie, people could simply just write it off and discredit her for her own powers and her own development. And I think it's kind of a disservice to the story. If they decide to do it, would I be surprised? No, I'd still hope they don't do it though.
So if they don't do it, that there's a lot of debate running around online right now about whose visions or whose memories or whatever she was seeing when she reached out for Luke's lightsaber in Maz Kanata's little dungeon.
Loved that sequence.
I know.
That was good.
The hilt looked, just for a moment, the hilt looked huge.
Oh, I mean, she's a tiny little diminutive girl.
Well, even in Finn's hands, the lightsaber, Luke's lightsaber hilt, Anakin's lightsaber hilt, looked frapping monstrous in there. You know, I have one of the Force FX. I have the Anakin Force FX prop out in the garage. Thanks, Mikey. And I always used to, the handle's just a little bit, bigger than the movie prop, but God, the movie prop looked monstrously large.
I wasn't mad.
No, not at all. I thought it was fantastic.
Anyway, what?
So the memories, the memories, the acid trip, whatever she was having, the contact high. Where do you think those were coming from?
I think the first one is the corridor on Bespin in Cloud City, right before Vader sends Luke flying out the window.
Yeah,
because it looks like it. Two, that would have been one of the first traumatic memories attached to that lightsaber for Luke. I mean, apart from Anakin and Obi-Wan dueling it out on Mustafar, and I'm 90% sure they mixed in a little bit of Vader breathing in that sequence.
I remember hearing that as well.
I'll have to listen for it again tonight when I go see it again. I can't remember the rest of it. The part of the vision with the Knights of Ren on what looks like a battlefield where they've just kicked a lot of ass. Don't know. That could be.
I hadn't thought about that.
That could easily be anything. That can either be something that's coming up in the future, or it could be something that's already happened.
Because if these are
come up with the Knights of Ren,
yeah, I mean, if these are supposed to be Luke's memories or memories of people who previously wielded the lightsaber, that raises an awful lot of questions and either steers it away from the theory that they're specifically somebody's memories, or that we just really there's still more story to be had here. So that definitely raises an interesting point about.
Or that it's just within the Force. I mean, in Episode 5, Luke has a vision. Luke has several visions in Episode 5. He's got the vision in the cave, where he chops off his own face.
Oops.
He's got visions of Han and Leia being tortured in Cloud City. To to a certain degree, the whole thing is a little ambiguous.
Okay.
And that can be good. That can be good. You don't want to give too much away.
Interesting. A lot of interesting. The Knights of Ren thing in particular really kind of confounds some of those theories.
And then the part with Luke is fairly laid out. Obvious. I think something bad happened to his attempt at getting the Jedi started back up, and that kind of hit him hard, and then he disappeared.
And they call to that later on when Han and Leia are having that conversation, and that's lots of good stuff, lots of good speculation there. Finn, in spite of all the conversations that you and I have had about him, I found him to be a legitimately enjoyable character on the screen for probably 90% of the time.
Tell you.
I kind of feel like he's a fish out of water in the movie. Star Wars, for me anyway, is there's always kind of been archetypes that each character has been plugged into, each character in the main party has been plugged into. And I'm not quite sure what role Finn is supposed to play for all of the parallels that people are drawing to the original movies.
Finn is hesitant hero. Finn is, if you have to do it like that and everybody fills a specific role, which, honestly, side note, I'm going to be real for a moment, the only legitimate complaint I could see anybody having about this movie, aside from just being an insufferable butthole and picking apart things for the sake of picking apart things, would be that a lot of points, plot points, characters, all that, could literally be drawn to parallels in the original trilogy in almost every part, even down to, like, set dressing in some of the shots.
Yeah.
And, it's a cheap ploy at nostalgia, but you're only mad because it worked.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there.
Han Solo is a much bigger character than any one person can handle, so you've got two Han Solos in this movie. You've got Bro Dameron, who's your dashing, swaggering side of Han Solo, and then you've got Finn, which is your hesitant hero side of Han Solo, who's only really kind of ever known one thing. The more obvious parallel being that Han Solo was an Empire defector, which wasn't really ever covered in the movies, which I guess now that we really think about that, now that they've erased all expanded universe, I don't know if that's necessarily canon anymore. Soon for now that it's still canon. Han Solo is an Empire defector, so they got that parallel to Finn. And Finn spends most of the movie trying to run away from the danger because he just wants to separate himself from it, but keeps getting drawn back in, eventually to the point.
And stealing men's clothes, by the way.
It was a dope jacket. I was stolen it. He gets to the point, though, that he proactively puts himself in harm's way to save Rey, which is, at the beginning of the film, not something he would have done, because at the beginning of the film he was literally doing everything he could to escape, like lying. Granted, it was for his own protection. He wasn't lying maliciously or anything like that.
But he's trying to get away.
But it's a come around, much like in Episode 4, where Han Solo gets the thing done because money's the motivator, and then he's
comes back at the very end of the movie.
And then you hear him screaming over the comm language and shoots time for him to. Yeah. If you haven't seen Episode 4, you have no business watching this movie or this blog or being in my life. So, but no, I think if you had to shoehorn a character into whatever role from the original, Finn is your ambivalence of Han Solo.
The more I sit here and listen to you talk about that, the more I'm absolutely comfortable with that being where he fits. With that being where he fits in the world, and yeah, that's good.
Or we could make it easy and just say he's token black guy.
Han and Leia. Especially that scene in the movie where they're standing outside of the Falcon, they're getting ready to leave to go and get Rey back. Those conversations that they're having about, it wasn't all bad, and that's why you drive me crazy. And I just, they're on screen. I don't know if it was their on screen chemistry or me just being so happy that they're on screen again together. Those two were pretty much perfect every single stinking moment that they were on the screen together. I absolutely, and I remarked to a friend of mine at one point that, God, Carrie Fisher is not doing well. To which she responded, actually, Carrie Fisher is doing fucking fantastically. For a 50 or a 60-some-odd-year-old woman who's been through all the shit that she has, Carrie Fisher is actually upright and freaking gorgeous for what she's gone through. And so I will rescind that statement. But, absolutely dug every last second of those two being on the screen together. So I had when we get to the towards the end of the third act of the movie, when Finn and Rey and Chewie and Han are rolling around inside of Starkiller Base,
Death Star 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah. The rumors had been circulating. I wasn't able to avoid them completely. And I know you and I had some conversations about this. The rumors had been kind of circulating on the internet.
I told you it was going to be Han.
I
told you.
And about one of the principals dying. And at this point, it's your own fucking fault if you haven't turned this video off. We had talked about how there was a lot of speculation about it being Chewie, since Peter Mayhew was just getting so physically far on to do that work. We'll take a moment here to just give a huge thumbs up to Peter Mayhew, because Chewie is just joyful to be in the movie again. I found myself suspiciously caring more about Chewie and about what was going on with the Wookiee than I did Han.
It's because it's hard to find a good assistant.
The sidekicks. Although Han Solo's good getting other people shot. The setup was almost exactly the same as it was in Jedi. Han's battling with something, Chewie's covering him, somebody gets shot in the arm again. And you're doubly pissed off, because not only did those fuckers just shoot Chewie, but you've shot a small defenseless furry animal, and the only people that do that are assholes.
Small 7-foot furry animals that tear arms out of sockets of people who piss it off. Right?
I just, and then, at the point where, they're wandering around inside of there, they're placing all the detonators, and then Han hands Chewie the trigger. I thought, this is how it's going to go down. Chewie's going to get caught on a different level of the base, and Han and Rey and Finn are going to, be backed into a corridor near the exit for the firefight, and Chewie's going to tell him to go, and he's going to push the button, and it's going to be, just like them dropping a moon on him in the expanded universe, and that's going to be Chewie's heroic sacrifice. And you knew it was coming. The foreshadowing, once you went into that part of the movie with the fact that somebody was going to die, you knew something was coming, and you knew that this was going to be the scene where it was going to happen. And once he handed in the detonator, I was like, oh, if they take the Wookiee, I'm going to be so mad. I won't be angry. It would have been hugely potent. And now that he survived, you leave him alone. But I find myself being a great deal more concerned about Chewie dying than I was Han. What did you think of Han's last moments? What did you think of how they did that?
Potent, very sweet. One could get out of shape and say, like, oh, it's not like Han Solo, but this is Han Solo 30 years after the events of Return of the Jedi. Han Solo's a different person now. They've been through a lot. I mean, that's his own flesh and blood, something that he probably never thought was going to be a thing. Certainly not the last time that we saw Han Solo. I'm not a parent myself, so I can't really speak to this with any first-hand experience, but there's a lot invested when it's your own flesh and blood. I would state that I was by no means a terrible child, but I've seen parents who would fawn over the absolute shitbagginest of children still see it today, and I feel like any actual parent would tell you, like, yeah, that's my son, that's my daughter, that's my kid. So there's always going to be that level of care in spite of everything that may or may not have happened, and that factors into it. Which just makes it suck all the more that he was betrayed. Now it just kind of leaves me wondering, like, what route they're going to take with Kylo. Like, are they going to try and shoot for redemption? Because, on the one hand, he's obviously a very conflicted character. It's kind of shoe on the other foot to have a dark character. Like, oh, I feel the light pulling at me. How awful. It's usually the other way around.
Yeah.
You have a light character with the dark side pulling at you. It's kind of an interesting flip there.
Kylo Ren has the soul of a cockroach.
and the potential for redemption now likely to be kind of resting on Luke and Leia. The opportunity for Luke to do what he essentially failed to do in Episode 6. Now, he was like, oh, well, Vader had his redemption because he killed the Emperor, or this or that. Yeah, but he still died. And yeah, he was redeemed by that. But I was thinking about this a bit about this last night. Luke didn't really succeed in what he was supposed to do. Luke didn't defeat Vader. He refused to put himself in the position where he would have to kill his own father. When given the opportunity, he literally threw his weapon across the room and got fried like Jedi popcorn instead of stepping up, dispensing of Vader, and then killing the Emperor when the Emperor would have been close. Like, oh, good job, shake my hand. Like he could have done.
Would you?
So there's potential there to see Luke make a hard decision that he technically didn't have to make. And I know that's probably not going to be a popular opinion, but it's just kind of a interesting take on it I came up with last night right before I fell asleep. Anyway, no, the Death of Han Solo was potent, handled well, not milked out to exorbitant lengths, not hammed up. It was just a blatantly honest moment.
Yep, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
A little weird. It was basically cookie cutter. The set pieces were kind of cookie cuttered out from the guts of Cloud City, but
right?
Like my hand hurts. Someone about to lose a hand? No, it was good though.
While we're still talking about good guy characters, first off, I thought the Millennium Falcon looked gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just no substitute for real. God, why can't I think of the practical effects? And many and varied are the stories of the full Millennium Falcon that J.J. Abrams built to film this movie, and I thought that the movie was better for it, both outside of the ship and in. We'll spend a little bit more time talking about the practical effects here in a minute, but I spent an absurd amount of time, virtually every time the Millennium Falcon was in the air, in Atmo, just wincing for how much of a beating that poor ship was taking.
Yes.
Just keep that damn thing off the ground, guys!
Well, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, G-forces weren't a thing. A ship that probably weighs at least 2-3 tons, maybe. Probably...
Probably more than 2 or 3 tons.
Yeah, probably.
That's a pickup truck.
Really big pickup truck. Really big.
It killed me. Every single thing bouncing along the ground and ramming it through trees. I'm like, God almighty.
To their credit, sound design wise, I like how you can hear the loose bits on the ship rattling when you're on the inside when they're flying around. It's such small touches like that serve to create a more immersive experience when you're watching a movie.
Yep.
And it's kind of funny that we even have to mention this, given that Star Wars wrote the book in many ways on sound design from Foley art. But just that little added touch really kind of did a lot.
So while we're talking about sound effects, that's a fantastic segue. I mentioned in my review that of most of the nits that I had to pick were incredibly small. One of the little things, J.J. Abrams clearly knows how a lightsaber is supposed to sound when it's starting up and shutting down. He even goes so far as to put it into one of his trailers.
Yep.
And yet, when Finn finally sparks the bong, there's
Yeah.
A little thing. I find...
it didn't sound quite right.
No, it didn't.
And I won't say the movie suffered for it, but it certainly would have, again, just added to the experience.
Yeah, hearing that in...
Make the Luke Skywalker lightsaber sound so I know it's real.
Yes. When he turns it on at the Battle of Endor, right before he cuts the front off of that speeder bike in Episode 6.
Different lightsaber, though.
You talking about the blue one when he sparks it up in Empire when he's fighting Vader?
Different lightsaber. So I mean, and the sounds between those two lightsabers in the original trilogy were different. But even still, and for the record, I like the sound of the Episode 6 saber better. So I like that lightsaber better in a lot of ways. A lot of neat little, not in the movie, but super nerd details about that lightsaber that make it pretty cool. No, the lightsaber didn't sound like it was supposed to, which bummer, but not certainly not a deal breaker.
So let's talk about the Chrome Trooper herself, Captain Phasma.
Captain Fett.
Yeah,
Phasma.
Sort of there. I kind of feel like she was underused. I hope she gets more screen time in the next couple of movies, because there's clearly an interesting character there.
Well, interesting character, and
she's so shiny.
Yeah, and for all the big game they've talked about this character leading up to release and all that, it's like, oh, new pictures of Captain Phasma this, Captain Phasma that. I'm like, cool. So she's probably going to do something other than get captured and made to lower the shields
and tossed into a trash compactor.
Yeah, it's way to utilize all your strong female principal actors there, Abrams. Which for those who don't know, the woman behind the shiny actress named Gwendolyn Christie. She's popular for being on Game of Thrones. I've seen this many episodes of Game of Thrones, but I hear it's popular. So it's gotta be something. She's really tall.
She's very, very tall. And she definitely exudes the air of not to be fucked with when she's
when she's out of
costume. She's got a very, very severe...
Which is what makes this so interesting, because, like, first I didn't see the parallel at all. I was like, why are they calling it the next Boba Fett? This is exactly what we're talking about. He and I are sitting here having been given the impression through what's fed to us through press or photos or buzz amongst the fan base, like, oh, Phasma's awesome. She's this, she's that. She got tossed in a SAR trash compactor. Wrong movie.
They're not going to add the tentacles to the trash compactor until post.
I know, the tentacly part was another part that was back in Act 2. No, I like you. I just genuinely hope they kind of flesh her out a little bit more in the other movies. There's potential there.
So, the first time Emperor Supreme Leader Dust Space Führer Snoke,
just Space Hitler,
gosh, just one little mustache away. The first time he leans in close, I thought, my God, it's Smeagol in space. Slightly crossed with a cave troll.
Except literally.
And, Andy Serkis obviously doing... he's so underrated. I cannot tell you how much I love Andy Serkis.
I just hope that hologram was to scale and that
I know, right?
Is actually 10 feet tall, because if he ends up being someone that carries
little fucking Muppet.
If he ends up being somebody that carries a lightsaber, that's going to be like a house-sized lightsaber.
That's what Starkiller Base was.
Yeah.
Snoke's lightsaber.
Anyway.
Definitely want to see more of him in Episode 2. Little things, little practical effects. I have to say, I like the old Stormtrooper helmets better. And you should absolutely feel guilty. I really wish you would have brought your helmet over with you.
I thought about it.
I do. I've got a link in my blog entry to a graphic that shows, like from the breastbone up, an old Stormtrooper morphing into the new one, and the old Stormtroopers were scary. I mean, they were never going to shoot you, but they were scary because they were big
and around you.
They were white and completely anonymous and slightly disproportionate with those heads and. I think the new Stormtrooper helmets. I just kind of feel like they're grinning at you the entire time. I mean, they didn't look bad, but there's just something off about them.
I won't say I dislike them. I like the old ones better, but that's because they're the old ones.
Yeah.
Because it is what it is.
I did think it was interesting, and I was very, very happy in the movie at the point where, you know, Finn is, they've come back up from the surface of the village, and Finn has taken his helmet off, and he's breathing heavily, and Captain Phasma comes up from behind him and asks him, you know, who told you could take your helmet off? Now, I may be looking way, way too deeply into this, but I think that's a fantastic question to ask a stormtrooper, since they're supposed to be the anonymous, white, you know, faceless wave that represents the Empire. Nobody wants to think of stormtroopers as humans.
Putting the space in SS.
Yes. They just want that giant, you know, all the stormtroopers are, once you kill one, another one pops up. No individuality at all, and I don't. Yeah, and I just, you know, I thought that was maybe I'm reading way, way too far on that, but I hope that's what that was a subtle nod towards.
Might have been. I can't remember if it was addressed in the movie specifically. I just know that I read this from somewhere from a semi-reputable source, anyway. But you know, salt shakers at the ready. You had mentioned how you had a little bit of trouble with his conditioning not sticking thing.
Yeah. Which, for those who haven't seen the review yet, you should be ashamed. But what he's talking about is the fact that they're at one point, General Nux is having a conversation. Hux. Yeah. Is having a conversation with the only ginger general in the Empire. My God!
Affirmative action.
Yeah. They're having a conversation with it might have been Snoke.
No, it was between Hux and Phasma.
Was it between Hux and Phasma? Mm-hmm. About how he stood behind the mental conditioning of his stormtroopers, and that he didn't feel that they needed to go back to using clone troopers. Now, at least in the expanded universe, the Sparsy cloning chambers have been destroyed. The Kaminoan facilities have been destroyed. Obviously, the expanded universe stuff is right out the window, which begs the question of, do they have cloning facilities at their disposal again? But B, if you have opted out of the superior mental conditioning afforded by clones, which apparently, based on this conversation, is available, and opted into simply mentally conditioning subjects that you pick from all of the colonies so that you can more easily maintain control of them, something that the Empire did after the fall of the Republic, you would figure that your mental conditioning would not let somebody like Finn into the field if he was that hesitant to follow orders and pull the trigger.
Good storytelling, though, relies on anomalies, things that violate the norm of any given universe. Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit work because hobbits don't leave the Shire. They stay in their hole, They smoke a lot of pipeweed, they eat, they drink.
My people.
Right. Bilbo Baggins was an incredible character because he overcame that. He escaped his pigeonhole. Luke Skywalker, moisture farmer, escaped his pigeonhole. Finn, same thing. What I was about to say that I thought I heard somewhere was that he, based on his assessments, was expected to rise up through the ranks pretty fast. And again, like, I'm not sure if I remember reading this. This could have been just somebody else's theory. For all I know, I just binged a bunch of Star Wars information before I watched the movie. But bear with me, if that were the case, then you could easily posit that the reason this condition didn't work is because he was a superior subject or different. He was the anomaly, and that's what makes his character special. It could have been literally any other stormtrooper, but it wasn't. It was him. If not for that, then there would have been nothing to, spark the story. The story is not a good story without conflict. And in this case, it was his own internal conflict against his conditioning that starts his journey.
All right. I can live with that. It's now time to talk about Kylo Ren. He's... yeah, I keep, and it's inevitable, I suppose. I had this problem with Darth Maul and I'm having it now again with Kylo Ren. Darth Maul was a punk and a thug, and yes, he had the double-bladed lightsaber. Kylo Ren just seems like a kid who stumbled into his parents' gun collection. He's somebody who's stumbled onto power and he exudes petulant teenager that has all of this power, and it's just so cranky that he doesn't. There's no cold menace. He stalks around from scene to scene like a barely restrained tantrum, and I have a really hard time respecting him as the baddie. Obviously, Snoke is supposed to be the ultimate evil in these movies, but I have a really hard time putting Ren up on the pedestal that I feel he should be like. And one of the reasons why I have a hard time doing that is because he takes his stinking mask off. You see his face so quickly in those movies. Darth Vader and I can't help it. I can't help comparing the two of them. Darth Vader was such an excellently designed villain. Because he had a cape. Completely drawing a line over the Incredibles here for a second. He had a cape, and so whenever he was on screen, his presence was always just larger than life. He wasn't always clearly visible. There was always that great voluminous black misty cape following him around. B, you could never see his face. C, his voice didn't sound normal because of the respirator that he was wearing, and so he was inhuman. He was dark, he was evil, he was inhuman. And I feel like they've swung the tiller over completely in the opposite direction with Kylo Ren. Mm-hmm. Before I go any further, I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
I'm going to answer your question with a question.
Shoot.
If they tried to make Kylo Ren Darth Vader, how much more upset would you be? We've dedicated a lot of time here discussing who's the new... Finn is the new blank of this trilogy, Rey is the new blank of this trilogy. Kylo Ren is obviously the new Darth Vader of this trilogy, but that would be a disservice both to this and the original trilogy. The point of Darth Vader is there can't be another Darth Vader, and that's something that you have to remember. Case in point, one of the greatest personal challenges or conflicts that Kylo Ren has as a character is he desperately wants to be Darth Vader, but Kylo Ren can't be Darth Vader. That's part of his motivation. If he was the next Darth Vader, then we've completely missed the point, and the character falls flat. I personally think. Now, I don't mind so much that he took the mask off. Hello. How are you doing?
Good to see you.
You too.
I don't know some stuff. And we're off rails.
I don't mind so much that he took the mask off. I do think it was premature to take it off as early in the film as he did. Because his little hissy fit he has where he chops up that first...
I thought that was hilarious.
It was hilarious. Like, I'm sitting there, he does that, I'm like, well, now we can't steer the ship. Good job. I guess we'll just wait.
Kylo takes out life support.
We'll just wait for a space tow.
Hissy fit's a good term for it. This is totally what's happening there.
If he had still had the mask on, we would have achieved kind of that quiet, mysterious menace you were going for. It would have been very clear that we're dealing with a far more unhinged person, and that's good. That's different. That's fresh. But to have taken the mask off and revealed that I know what... If you don't know what Adam Driver looks like, I don't know what the hell you've been. There was a Vanity Fair spread that showed him in costume with his mask off. Like,
he's a nose with a face attached to it.
You know what the guy looks like in the costume without the mask on? He looks like JP from Grandma's Boy, and you expect him to start making robot noises.
My beef's strong.
Really kind of undermined it for me. Like, she sees through us. She knows we're not a Sith. Like, I expected that shit to happen, and I had to really, push that down. I'm like, nope. Star Wars, be more respectful. Better than this. Taking the mask off too early kind of undermined it. But at the same time, it's every little thing like that goes to show that that this isn't Darth Vader we're dealing with. This is a new character with their own motivations, and frankly, without the prequels there to show you that phase of Darth Vader's life. I mean, Kylo Ren is Episode 2-3 Anakin Skywalker. Again, if you want to make me
No need to be insulting.
I'm serious. If you're gonna make me find the round hole for his square peg, if you're gonna make me do that, then I'd have to say that is the parallel I would draw. What we're dealing with is an untested, training not complete, petulant young man. Darth Vader was 60-something, 50-something? Darth Vader was old. Darth Vader had a whole lifetime of experiences that were motivating him. Kylo Ren is much younger. He was obviously under the tutelage of Luke Skywalker for a bit. So he is Force adept, so he knows how to use the Force a little bit. But it's made very clear multiple times in that movie that his training is incomplete. So he's not going to be able to be on the level of Darth Vader. Yeah, I mean, that honestly, I think the only shortcomings that we see are primarily derived from people trying to shoehorn him into that role, which is really unfair to Kylo Ren. You got to go easier on him.
So, moving forward, while we're on the subject of Kylo Ren, to the lightsaber fights in the movie. Right. I'm so much happier with the way that they did the fights in this movie than they did in the prequels, and we'll stomp on those in a second. But one of the things that George Lucas had talked about the lightsabers being like in some of the special features again on that set of DVDs was that he wanted them to be great and heavy and that you were moving around something that was huge. Yeah, something heft. That's a good word. And you don't see that. And, the Jedi's in their prime. I don't care.
The Jedi's whipping around lightsaber like it's a bit of PVC pipe. While the fighting style in the prequels may be a little bit more realistic in terms of using the lightsaber to its strengths, even simple touches become mortal wounds. I can't help but like the fights in the original movies better, and I really felt like the lightsaber fights in this movie, even when he was fighting against Captain Space Tonfa, which was awful, I really feel like the lightsaber fights in this movie called back to the original ones. We've been showing the original trilogy at work pretty much on a constant repeat, like 4 through 6, just in a loop for the last week and a half. So I've been watching a lot of it lately. And yeah, that's another parallel that I saw. The fight scenes in the original. Now, granted, at the time, they were limited because of the props, the way they were designed, because they were heavier. Lightsabers, back when those were filmed, were also powered. They were on cords. They were very limited to what they could do, but those were still very well orchestrated fight scenes. In particular, the duel between Luke and Darth Vader at the end of Episode 6. Yeah, they're not doing front flips and spins and all the visual masturbation of the prequels, which is cool. It's fun to look at, but there's a lot more emotion in the duels of the originals, and they really came back to that here. And I was like, it's just because they're kids and they don't know what they're doing with the lightsaber. I don't care. It looks better and it works better because it feels like there's a lot more at stake when it's more a duel to the death and less a gymnastics exhibition with flashing swords.
Yeah. I originally had objections and problems with how far Finn made it in his lightsaber fight with Kylo. I thought that Kylo should have struck him down.
I got a counter argument to that, but continue.
Almost right out of the chute. And yeah, you can clearly see that he's playing with him, kind of like Vader's playing with Luke in the first couple of go-arounds that they have. But I'll quietly set Finn aside for a moment. I'm trying to decide how powerful they wanted Rey to be, because she goes from being a virtual unknown in the world of using Force powers to the scene with the Jedi mind trick was perfect.
By the way, that was Daniel Craig in a Stormtrooper suit.
No shit!
That was his cameo.
And I'll drop my gun. Which that was absolutely fantastic. But, you know, I'm trying to decide how powerful Daisy Ridley Ray was supposed to have been in that scene, because after Finn gets deboned from the rear, Kylo Ren is the Predator. He's getting ready to remove the spine as a trophy. And then all of a sudden Rey steps up and I kept on expecting her to cut one of his hands off. Towards the end of that fight, when she really starts romping up on him, I kept on expecting her to cut one of his hands off.
It would have been tight, but lopping off hands and arm, with the exception of Episode 4, not Super Jedi, I don't think. Not to mention that was the first time she touched a lightsaber in her life. That we know of.
Fair point.
Take that for what it is.
I thought that whoever had the idea to film a lightsaber fight at night was bloody brilliant. Mm-hmm. That whole scene was gorgeous. A little bit Genesis Planet there at the end when Krabs. That's my one gripe about that. The end of that fight, she's her knocking down the gun. All of a sudden,
on his face and say, "I've had enough of you."
But then all of a sudden, she's like this far away from Kylo, and there's room for this massive chasm to drop out between the two of them. Oh.
She could have cleared that.
Yeah, she's got ups. Yeah. You know, for all that we've been talking in this and that and the other, I just to kind of bring this back around. A really good movie. Yeah. I could have gone and watched it a second time, full stop, without...
Let me circle back. One last thing about that
fight. No, if there's anything else, go ahead.
I get that you don't like how far Finn made it in the fight, but I would simply circle back to the point that I made earlier. Kylo Ren is, at best, not a complete character. His training's incomplete. We don't know how Force-adept Snoke is, so we don't know what he can and can't teach him. Case in point, he's got junkyard lightsaber that it looks like he just kind of cobbled together, which is the explanation I'm taking for why the blade looks weird.
Well, and I want to say that there's material online to support your...
Yeah, because J.J. Abrams has come out and said... to sum it all up, maybe not direct quote from J.J. Abrams, I'm paraphrasing, but he did say Kylo Ren is not a Sith.
He's one of the Knights of Ren.
Which is something that he started, which I'm sure they'll get into later. There's supplemental material out there from Marvel. They're doing a comic run right now that covers events between episodes 5 and 6 and 6 and 7. Maybe there's material on it in there. I haven't read it. I don't know. Kylo Ren is not a Sith. His training's incomplete. So yeah, he can do some cool stuff, but he's not on the same level as any of our principal characters from the other ones. Case in point, Luke couldn't hold his own against Vader until he had more training, and his training still wasn't complete by the time he fought Vader again in Episode 6. Yeah, it's a little weird that Finn can pick up a lightsaber and do it, but Stormtroopers are trained in hand-to-hand combat, obviously, because you have your Electro Tonfa.
It hurts me so much.
Be mad about that all you want. It was fucking cool. It would have been easy to let Kylo Ren just absolutely eviscerate Finn. Well, you kind of did, but new characters. You gotta let them live to fight another day.
Started down at the ass crack and all the way up to the top of the head.
And again, much, like I said, formulaically, this movie follows the original trilogy. So many levels, including but not limited to your Act 1 of this new trilogy ends with, big victory for the good guys, but your principal characters live to fight another day. There are a lot of unanswered questions. We know who the enemy is, but we know next to nothing about them. And now we wait.
Yeah, so Luke Skywalker clearly has a better sense of housing than Yoda or Obi-Wan did.
It's his personal taste, really. And Obi-Wan was on Tatooine for a reason.
That's just true. Obi-Wan's in a desert. Yoda's in a swamp. Luke apparently has a condo on the Hebrides.
Yoda's a small frog thing.
That's where you're supposed to go. Go back to your home.
It's the only planet that grows those bees to make that weird chili stuff he made in Episode 5.
Yeah, it's the only place he can get the soup. Yeah. All in all, a lot of folks are saying that this is the movie. What?
Case in point,
Case
you would
in
have wanted to be there, or else he wouldn't have gotten all butthurt when Luke called it a slimy mud hole.
It's true. Conversation.
He got really upset.
Slimy mud hole. Yeah, a lot of people are saying that this is a movie that we wished we would have gotten when Lucas went and did the prequels. And I don't know. I mean, I would agree. I have never been as completely swept away with a Star Wars movie, with any new Star Wars movie as I have been with this one. This was just it was just a really, really good movie. I spent half of it just vibrating in my seat because I was so happy when R2 woke up. Oh my god. When he started making his... And there were parts of the movie when I thought, God, I almost wish they would have gone back to a crappier, lower fidelity of film to make the movie look not quite as new and shiny, but, then you started seeing some of the practical effects.
I think they struck a very good...
I agree. When
the movie was shot, for all you super duper film nerds out there, mostly shot on 35mm film. Some sequences were shot with the IMAX cameras. It's very rare that they shoot an entire movie with IMAX cameras because they're very, very loud and very, very expensive. I couldn't tell you which sequences in particular were shot with IMAX, but that's part of why it looks so real.
That scene when they're... I think it's when they're on Maskanata's planet, who I absolutely loved. The ancient talking head, somebody who's this generation's Yoda. Mm-hmm. I absolutely loved Maz Kanata. I'm completely incapable of pronouncing the name of the woman who did the mocap for her.
Lupita Nyong'o.
What he said.
Which I could have been saying it wrong too, for all I know, but I tried.
That was wonderful. I thought she was a great talking head for the movie. But yeah, there's a scene, I think it's on her planet, where Rey and Han both are walking down on the gangplank of the Falcon, and it's just so huge and big as shit there in the background, and you're like, yeah, that's not CG. That's a... Yeah. I started to have a glimmer of hope for this movie when Kevin Smith made his announcement about getting to walk on board the Falcon, and that, yes, he's really, really doing it right. But I will honestly say that this exceeded even the wildest expectations of that. I really think he did that, and I hope the next one's. I hope the next one's just as good too. There's clearly so much that could be done, and at this point, they've established the current round of characters between Rey and Finn and Poe and BB-8 and all those things, that I think they could begin slowly but surely phasing the original universe characters out and moving Star Wars.
You don't want that.
Slowly but surely.
Not ready yet.
Slowly but surely.
Not ready yet.
Over the next several movies, and that the current way that it's being done, as long as it's handled like this. Loved all the dogfights. Loved all the dogfighting sequences. The one upside one of the upsides of them being able to film things as newly as they could, is you were finally able to do things with film and CG and this and that and the other that you could never have done in the original movies.
The subtle difference between use and abuse.
The dogfights were just absolutely fantastic. Heavy on the X-Wings. Would have loved to have seen some Y-Wings and B-Wings and A-Wings.
Yeah, but I mean, the Rebellion is sort of no longer anymore. They're even more ragtag than the Rebellion was to begin with, and I think that's reflected very effectively here.
It sounded like him. Was that Admiral Akbar? Was that supposed to have been Admiral Akbar?
Both Admiral Akbar and I might be pronouncing the character's name wrong, but Nien Nub or Noob.
Yum Nub.
Yeah, that one. Lando's co-pilot in the Falcon on the attack on the second Death Star.
Really? Was that was who the X-Wing pilot was? Huh.
Same character.
Cool. Was there like a 12-year-old girl flying one of the X-Wings?
Maybe, yeah.
The Pink 5 or Pink 2 or whatever, there's a fan film.
Hello Kitty 3.
Yeah, I was like, there's got a 12-year-old girl flying one of the X-Wings, which, if so, get some.
To get borderline existential about why this works the way it does, and how much older than me are you? By how many years?
I don't know. 10, 11, 100?
Star Wars had essentially kind of been and gone from its initial flash when you were a kid and when you picked it up. I was 4 years old when the first VHS sound-enhanced version of the trilogy dropped. When it came in the black box set with Darth Vader on the side.
Yeah.